Behold, I'm calling these rumors right now. Now, it's not a rumor in the sense that it's false. Like, the idea here is you're not generating false things. But I haven't gotten it all written up, obviously, yet. But the concept here is that you're going to roll for an event, right? You're going to roll for an event that's happened. Let me just roll one up. Roll for an event. Doing a D66 style. I got 52. So I scroll on down to 52, and I get a feast. And what I will get from this, okay, is this is what's happening, and it's happening somewhere. Then I can figure out the where. So what you would get in terms of this original initial thing that's happening, and I probably should put some weather things also, is that as a player, if you enter, let's say you enter the town, let's say you're in the settlement where this thing's taking place, right? So you might come into the local tavern, or you might, at that point, you might see preparations for this feast that's happening. You might not be invited, whatever, right? But this is what's happening. It's a feast. Okay. Now, how does this? So that's the event part. So the event part is, oh, I'm in town. Oh, and there's a feast going on. So this is my dynamic. This is my dynamic world going on. Yeah. See, they're not just waiting around. They're having a feast, even though we weren't doing anything about it. Okay. But it's also the plot hook in the sense that as players, I hope you start to think about there's a feast going on. How can we profit? Excuse me, a little cough there. Akraga asked, do I have an option to bind results to factions? I mean, I've got some things here. So, but the first thing is, let me just go into the first step. So the first step you get is, hey, there's a feast happening in the town. Right? Now, then immediately, Akraga was talking about factions. If you have a feast happening in a settlement, it's either there's either a religious leader or the sovereign, the terrestrial leader faction that's going to be involved. Like either the Lord is throwing this feast, or maybe whatever the church, temple, whatever is throwing the feast. I mean, you might in some way have some other rich, depending on your vision of what your world looks like, maybe you have some rich individuals. But basically, I play a pretty grounded, you're in the village, it's the local Lord throwing the feast. In a town or city, you might have merchants, and then you might work. But hey, if I roll that I've got a feast going on, and it's in this one hex that's got this settlement, it's the local Lord throwing the feast, unless there's some religious thing. But you could roll for it to be something else. But the point is that's all you get. Hey, there's this feast. Now, as a party, players, you may go, I'm not interested in the feast. Because maybe you got some other, if we're taking this as a new game, I might roll up a couple things. I might say, oh yeah, there's a feast happening here. I roll again. I got 32. So, okay, I got a feast in the current village. I also rolled up, I rolled up 32. So I've also got an omen was witnessed. Omen witnessed. Now let's roll for some distance for this one. I got 6 and 3, so 5 hexes northwest. And I would probably look to see what is 5 hexes northwest. Presumably it will be a near settlement, wherever they might be. And let's just roll for a third one, right? Rule of 3, right? Let's roll for one more. I got 54, which is an execution. And let's roll for where that is. 25, 1 hex to the southwest. So in a sense, here's what your party's looking at. Let me see some things in the, Krako says, one thing with rumors that they were thinking about is who tells the party the rumor. Krako says, which might tie into how they approach it, or you could just have that color the rumor. Yeah. So, I mean, well, there are a couple things, right? So yeah, how do they find out about it? Obviously, if it's something that's in a settlement as a whole, so there are some of these that are pretty big, right? A battle was fought. So any number of people are going to be talking about that. You can get into who the messenger is, and maybe I can make a table for that. But I kind of feel like you can sort of play it by ear, right? You could, the feast, you're going to see the preparations, even if it's happening in because I would assume a feast is not happening in the town itself. I would presume it's happening in the Lord's castle, right, in their keep. They're having this feast in their hall. But all that's drawing on resources, extra foods being brought in, maybe entertainment is coming, right? It's pulling they're pulling all this stuff from surrounding areas. So anybody in town is probably going to be, I should say, the village is probably going to be having on their lips, oh, they're doing this, and like what's going on? Oh, and certainly in my vision. So in my vision, just to kind of get a whole full sense of it, right? So you have your villages. Villages really revolve around the stronghold. No independent services. I should say no independent goods or services, with a few exceptions. There might be an alehouse, a miller, and maybe a hospice. So a couple things for just how this is working in the way I'm viewing the setting. Okay, just to get this. This is not like, oh, I come into the town and I go to the tavern. It's like you go to there are towns and there are taverns, but most of the places that you're going to, they're villages, and they don't have anything for you. There's nothing to buy. You want to hang around the village, you're going to have to get a farmer to let you sleep in their hayloft, maybe, or give you space in there wherever. Or maybe there's a hospice if you're on a main road or a crossroads, something like that. Maybe there might be a hospice or some kind of public house. But hospices, and at least in kind of my kind of setting, usually run by sort of religious things, and they take care of travelers and kind of do things like that. So you might have a hospice there, but you pretty much got to go to the keep. And I think, and the way I've been looking at it in terms of kind of your ye old fantasy medieval thing, when you have lots of armed folks walking around, you probably need to you need to go to the castle. The lords are, if you want to stay on good terms and not be ridden out of town or arrested, you probably need to go to the town, go to the lord or his rep and make your presence known. Hey, we're here. Like, we're not here to cause trouble. Kind of like in a Western I remember it's Silverado, one of my favorite Westerns. Underrated Western, I think, but I think it got overshadowed by things like Unforgiven, Tombstone, right? But this idea that there's at one point where they go into a town and they're going to make trouble, but they don't, it's not known yet, and they go into the in the cafe, and the sheriff kind of walks in, who's played by John Cleese, and he kind of gives a spiel, and then he says about their, ask them names, their kind of business. And I think that's just kind of what you do in these places is you go and you kind of make yourself known. Hey, yeah, we're armed, we're capable. Hey, if you need us, you can hire us or do whatever. But also, we're not here to cause trouble, right? We're giving you that kind of courtesy as the local lord, let you know we're here. And I think in any case where you have tons of armed folks walking around, I feel like most places would have some kind of policies. You better check in with the local law. We're not the Wild Wild West, right? We're not trying to be. I mean, maybe we are in practice, but we're not trying to be there. Just like in the Wild West, a lot of times we're trying not to be particularly wild. In this kind of setting, you're going to be interacting with lords and things on some level. Not that you're going to get, not necessarily you go to the castle and the lord's going to see you himself. You'll probably see somebody, if he's got multiple holdings, maybe there's a sheriff type, a shire reeve, which is where sheriff comes from, who's handling this stuff. There might be if they're a big lord, maybe they've got castellans or some other people. They probably have some kind of factor, butler, man, woman, somebody, some kind of official part of their retinue who will handle you, but you're going to go check in with somebody. So because you're interacting with people more or less directly, you're going to get you're going to get views into what's happening in a way different than you do in a lot of, say, other traditional kind of D&D type games where you're getting it all from the innkeeper. Because a lot of times there's not going to be a lot of innkeepers around necessarily. But since you have to go and make your presence known, you're going to see some other things. But ultimately, you can play around with where the rumor for a particular thing comes from. A feast is going to be pretty. It could also be they just experience it. They just witness some of this directly. If you're in the village and the feast day is approaching, you're just paying attention at all. And again, since there's not much to do with these villages, you're probably watching the road, or you're trying to get an audience with the Lord, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. Even if it's just like looking for work or something like that. Because goodness knows the farmers in the village, unless you're running one of these plot hooks, like, can you kill 100 rats in my cellar kind of thing? Well, that's not where the action is anyway. So you're probably trying to see what's going on and get an audience or whatever. So you got that kind of going on. So feast in the current village. Got to be pretty obvious. An omen that was witnessed 5 hexes to the northwest. I would say that might be something that you got to put your ear to the ground a little bit. Maybe you're hearing whispers of it. If you're traveling along the roads with people, you might hear it that way. You might get it when you come into a town. It might be something that people are proclaiming. Oh my gosh, like kind of like the sky is falling. Oh, it's the year 1000. Jesus is about to return, kind of thing, or whatever it is. Oh, that's all this stuff's going on. So that's how that comes up. But again, you want to play around with how it's communicated. That could be another thing. But there it is, and it's coming from some distance away. That might be something, and of course, an execution. But I guess my point is that all you're getting is this thing. A feast is happening here. An omen was witnessed. An execution. But you don't get a lot of the details. So in terms of like the rumor part, I'm calling them vague rumors because you're only getting this really surface level, very, very top level thing. I'm like, yeah, he's having a feast. The Lord's having a feast. Why? You got to figure it out. Like, it's not just, it's not like you might see in a lot of times you see this kind of rumor things where it's like almost like several sentences or a long sentence of the king is having a feast for the honor of Saint Doo-doo-doo and da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's a lie. No, you're just, a feast is happening. If you want to know more, you're going to have to go suss that out more. Some of it might be very easy. It might literally be just asking why. And then you can say, well, I don't know, something's getting married, something's happening. I don't know. Right. Or it could be, say, the omen. I don't know. We just heard that somebody had this crazy thing, something that's never been seen in 100 years. And they saw like, what is, I don't know. What does it mean? I don't know. We just got the fact that it happened. So you have a world event or a regional event, if you want to, or a local event, depending on where it is. So maybe we looks like we kind of have one local event, or maybe we call them the one hex is also essentially local. So maybe you have maybe 2 local events and then one more of a regional event because it's happening just further away, right? And it's just a very broad level. What does it mean? I don't know. What does it pretend? I don't know. I don't know. We don't know anything. But you don't have to know anything because all we have to do is stay basically a step ahead of the players. Or at least revealing what they do. So if the party, you're doing your thing, maybe it's as a new game or something, and you're like, okay, you're in this town where they're preparing for a feast. As you're in you're hanging out in the main square or below at the foot of the I forget the name of the earthworks that the hill or whatever that the stronghold's on. You can hear there's a lot of hubbub going on because not only is this feast happening, but you hear some people talking about this omen, that was witnessed, that people saying it's just a once in a generation kind of thing that was seen, and what does it mean, right? And then you also hear, because some of these people are also coming from a neighboring village just down the way, that they got somebody, they're erecting the gallows or whatever, they're setting up they're putting the platform together where they're going to do the beheading or the hanging, or however in your world they tend to execute people. Now the who's, the whys, we don't know why there's a feast. We know because the feast is here. We can just say, okay, the local lord's doing the feast, or the local religious person. We can roll a die, or we can ask an oracle. Is it the Lord, or is it is it yay or is it nay? Right. And then we have this omen, and we have this execution. And that's kind of all we need. And then we just wait to see kind of what steps the party does to glom onto one of them. And when they do that, then we can either, if we have ideas, we can just go with them. Because maybe I say the omen, and I already got stuff in my world. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm looking up in an area. Oh, there's a religious sect up there. And oh yeah, this totally makes sense. So it kind of just plays in the stuff I already have. So I just write it in there. But if it doesn't, I can just kind of leave it and then see what the party does. And once the party starts to make moves on it, then I can use further oracles or things to then flesh out the whys and who's attached and that stuff. Okay, so Brian says, say the party decides to pursue the execution. Can you roll on something there to flesh that out, or do you have to slow play it and have the execution figured out next session? I mean, it really. So yeah. So I would say, and like this is where I have some of these other tables. So let's say the execution, and they ask about it. So I have some very, this kind of system does either need to have a little bit of your improvisational kind of mindset going, or you can set up some more tables, or maybe the night. So let's say, okay, so so they just did the executions. Now we need to know, like, well, who's getting executed now? In this case, this table here, it's essentially, and maybe I could come up with a folk table, because folk are just people, right? Folk are people, powers are factions, creatures are animals and whatnot, monsters are monsters, Yonderkin are like fae, and whites are like spirits. So we can already kind of say, like, well, it's not going to be a white. They're not, you'd kill those and display them, but I mean, you could execute, I suppose it could be because Yonderkin, like fae creatures, are intelligent. Maybe you hold one up to be executed. It's not going to be a whole faction. You're not executing the duchy. Even if you're executing a duke, it would be an individual, right? So you say, okay, it could be a folk, could be Yonderkin. That's where you could use it as a yes/no kind of question. Is it a person or is it a fae? And I might say that it's most likely a person. So I would probably say, really, 5 out of 6, it's a person. 1 out of 6, it's some kind of fake creature that was caught and they're doing something too. So I rolled a 1. So it's a person. Maybe I could probably add a table in here that's what kind of person, because I have kind of some bit about what kind of some things are, like what kind of creatures and monsters that I could probably have one for people, but maybe I could say, okay, let's just say 1's a peasant, 2 or 1 to 2 is maybe 1 to 3 is a peasant. Let me hold on. Let's see. So let's just make a folk. Let's make a folk table really quick. So we've got D6, folk. So 1 to 3, peasant. Let's see, 4 to 5 would be something like that. So we could just have a simple table. So I'll just roll on that and say, okay, well, they're going for the execution, and I roll a 3. It's a peasant. Some poor peasant. And, if I wanted to do crimes, all right, so we've probably got, I would say probably the big one is, right, theft. I mean, is there even another one? Is it in 6, treason? I mean, really, in this kind of situation, right, that is basically one of those. So let's say, okay, and the crime he did, wow, was 6. So something treasonous. Someone can figure it out. I mean, eventually you're going to have to put in some kind of your own thought into it. I can't, nobody can table everything out for you, right? But I feel I could probably add in a couple of tables like this really quick for crimes, vague. There's probably some other kind of crimes, but really I just feel like in those times, it's essentially theft, murder, treason. Probably be the ones. Maybe there's some other one. I mean, a lot of things can end up being theft. Fraud would probably come down to theft. Essentially, you could think about, like, a lot of things just be like, oh yeah, you told us, you sold us, crap that you said was an elixir. That's basically thievery, right? If somebody died from it, maybe you get upgraded to murder. And of course, anything that's in any way seen as threatening the status, the power structure of the status quo, they would, treason. Whatever. I feel like those would probably work. So if they decide to go see what the execution's all about, you can roll whenever it's convenient. If it happens to be in another session, great. If you roll in the moment, that's great. If you have a particular NPC in mind, you could probably slot them in. I think my idea is that you just keep. So I guess the idea is you keep drilling in. You sort of use well, how can I put this? You drill down only as far as your party drills down into it. So we get to we'll just keep playing through this kind of execution bit. So we have the execution plot. Execution plot. Okay. So we got the vague rumor is, right. The vague rumor is an execution is being held, I guess, a public, right? Being held in a neighboring village. Okay, that's it to start. But now the party is, as the party makes their first inquiries, we learn that, yep, the doomed folk is a peasant who was found to have committed treason. Okay. That's the first inquiry. Okay. Now, ideally, they're not going to be able to get all of this just through like asking the question, because what I'm trying to get here, what I'm trying to do is push for the players to commit actions, commit to it. So, oh my gosh, they're gonna, you hear that these mumblings about some poor sap is due to be drawn and quartered tomorrow at dawn. And like, and the party's asking, oh, what did they do? Like, I don't know. I don't know what they did, but they're making a big show of it. Okay. And that's okay. So that is me taking this execution, and yeah, I am right. I got drawn and quartered. Great. Could be hanging. Could be whatever. Maybe you don't even know. They're like, I don't know. They're just prepping for it. They're gonna make a big deal of it tomorrow. Whatever. Or they're waiting for the weekend, a holy day. I don't know. You can figure it out. Okay, great. So now the party makes their choice. This doesn't sound right. What's going on there? What, some poor farmer sap? What? Like, how does that? This does not track. We declare we're interested, and how do we get more information? Well, we got to go to the town. We got to go to that other village and see what's what. Okay. Now they go to the village. Workmen, presumably somewhere public, are setting up the stage to do whatever. We know that we can assume from this treason that it's happening against one of the leadership people. So again, we can decide, or we can roll dice. Is it the religious leader? Is it the civic leader? If we got an idea, maybe there is no religious leader here. Not every village is going to have some, big arch priest or whatever, right? I mean, maybe there's some priests here, maybe they're not. Maybe the village where the party started at, that's where it's not going to be everywhere. So we can say, you know what, there's the local lord. So okay, so we know who the intended victim is, but we don't know who the person is. But the party doesn't either. And until they start asking about it, we don't know, but we don't necessarily need to know. I mean, we can start thinking about it, and I always feel like you listen to what the players are saying. Maybe they've got great ideas. You can still, because this is not me changing, because we're not changing the story. I guess the thing is, part of it is like, you know what? We're in the spot where the only thing that's been established is this event's happening. The execution of a peasant. That's all we've got here, and the town. That's it. So everything else we don't know what it is. So it can be whatever we want it to be. We're not tied down by anything. Obviously, once we establish it, it's established, but we haven't established it yet, so we don't know. It's up to the players to start asking around. Well, we already decided, because we rolled the dice, that it was treason. So if they ask about, like, well, what did this poor guy do? Treason. Something treasonous. I don't have a table for that. I'm probably not going to make a table for treason. You got to figure it out. Did they try to kill somebody, or and we don't. And again, remember, this is just what people are saying about it. So this is where the rumor part comes in. We know this execution's happening. This is true. The execution's happening of this person for this day. Everything else is some level of hearsay, interpretation, whatever. Right? This is they didn't go to they weren't convicted by a jury of their peers with evidence displayed to get found guilty. I mean, the amount of evidence needed to have somebody killed for treason is very, very thin, especially if you're playing kind of a low magic where you're not doing with zones of truths everywhere and all this stuff. It's super thin. They don't need much more than a pretense to take some poor slob and say, we're going to hang you up by your toenails because you did this, right? So did they really commit the treason? Unknown. But this is what the people who are being told anything at all are being told about. Okay. So we got that. Now, if they start digging in deeper, maybe we're like, okay, they are really interested in it. So let's say we want to know, like, well, we got to think about what they did. Like, well, what did they do? Well, that one I don't have a table for. What exactly did they do? But we could probably think about it. Maybe they were in a place they weren't supposed to be. Maybe, and this is where I could do something with the runes. If I had my rune system set up, maybe I could drop some runes and see what kind of runes I get. I might use some like mythic to get some kind of inspirational keywords. I could do that too. I could probably put up some some kind of like just get some keywords going. I feel like there's tons of those. Brian Smith says, I'd want to throw some obstacles at them when they get to this town. Then at the end of the session, when they figure out the next detail, roll on some table and spend the off season deciphering it. Well, yeah, I mean, Brian, you absolutely could, because all they're getting, so they get to the town, okay, and the only thing they're getting that they didn't have before is now they know it was a treasonous crime, but they still don't know what. No one's telling them what. This is not a, and you have to imagine something I was thinking about, which kind of nothing that didn't like light a light bulb, but I found it very like, oh yeah, when you think about the last like terrible event that happened, right? And I mean, we had too many terrible events. Somebody, in a case where somebody was shot, which has happened, unfortunately, right, all too often, even when it's somebody that people are really interested in, know about a lot, it takes in our modern world with all the technology and all the speed of information, there's usually a pretty good lag in between we know what happened, the outcome, right, and then the kind of like who's responsible. And sometimes it takes a long time. When the healthcare company guy was murdered in New York City, it took weeks for them to sort out kind of what happened, and even getting all the details was probably hours and hours. And that's in our modern world. So you think in back in the day, in these times, people don't know anything, and the power people aren't telling you everything. You're not getting somebody saying, "Oh yeah," and you're going to get a whole write up in the newspaper. Let's read the New York Times scroll and roll. So all this stuff is going to have to be pulled out, and you're going to have to get access. So yeah, the people in the village that you get to, yeah, they know, like, yeah, he did something terrible against the Lord, and that's why they're doing this. But other than that, maybe they give you some character things like, yeah, I knew Sam. Sam was a nice guy. I don't know why Sam wouldn't do that. And again, I could roll some dice. I could roll some like, yeah, Sam. I could use I could use a morale type table. Oh, like I think actually I have something. Let's see, where is that? 'Cause I have a lot of things that are not here yet, but oh yeah. So let's just roll. So I got this kind of demeanor table. Let's look at that. So, Farmer Sam. He was known to be kind of sort of angry but prudent, right? So Sam was, he was angry, but he was a prudent man. What was he angry about? I don't know. Okay, fine. That kind of thing, right? So you can use those to also to sort of drum up some details. But the idea here is you're kind of pulling it out. And yeah, the party needs to figure out if they're interested in this, if they get enough where they're like, I don't know, this seems like a railroad situation. This doesn't seem right. We need to figure out what's going on. Either one, something really bad happened, but this peasant, is he really just a peasant? Whatever. That's when they start to adventure. And to Brian's point, there's all kinds of obstacles you can have there. Are you going to be going full investigator mode? Who are you going to talk to? Why are they going to talk to you? You're not from around there. You're right. This is the other thing I think often gets taken for granted. You're not from there. People don't know you. You're probably walking around armed and armored. I think I had a fun thing with my group one time where they wanted to go question some people, and I made them take off their armor. I didn't make them, but I was like, nobody's opening their doors to you. You're walking around in like full plate mail with your all armed up like you're marauders. Like they're just locking the doors in your face that they can't, even though they feel like, even though it probably wouldn't work. It's just like they're not talking to you. They're, you gotta. That's not the friendly face of somebody, right? So you got to convince people that you can talk, that they can talk to you, kind of trust you. Oh, by the way, the local people, the people in charge, they're not going to like that. If the local lord wants to put this guy to death for treason, and then some yahoos from another village, some other town, or from strangers come in and start asking all kinds of weird questions about it, that's not going to put you in good with him. So you probably need to go talk to them. So there's all kinds of things just in the social interactions that could be really interesting. And then all this gives you time as the GM to either get to the end of a session or just come up with an idea. I always feel like the players are coming up with stuff that they probably will give you a great idea before, is to figure out well, what was it? So, but maybe let's just say, let's just go and say, okay, well, who put them up to it, right? So this peasant, right? They're a patsy, maybe they're a pawn, whatever. They didn't do whatever they tried to do, which we don't know yet, right? But they weren't trying to do it themselves. So I roll some dice. Okay, it's a power. So I rolled a 2, which here a power. So I might think, okay, what other faction? Like, and I might ask kind of the cui bono question, right? Who benefits? Okay, there's another faction out there. Is another lord? I might. Is it who might? So this is why I might look at my roster of factions I've gone around and said, well, who does it make sense might be behind this and why? Or is there a new? Maybe I need. There's a new faction, something I didn't anticipate. It's not any of these guys. It's somebody new on the block that's making waves, or it could be their own faction. Like the calls coming from inside the house. It's the son of the lord, or the daughter, or the wife, the uncle, who someone else is possibly whatever. Again, this. I don't think there's any system I've seen with tables that just fills in everything, so you don't have to do any kind of thinking about it. But hopefully, you get enough kind of inspirational stuff to go, oh yeah, well I did have this lord's family kind of fleshed out a bit, and I did have this little conflict, or maybe there's a conflict over here, like or I'll just make one up. Oh yeah, there was probably I'm going to say there was a conflict between him and another lord down the block, and yeah, this is totally that other lord, and maybe this farmer really was doing something dirty, but he was forced because his son or somebody else. His family is in that other land and they're under duress. And if they don't do it, something's going to happen to them. Let's say his son is a monk, a religious monk, and there's an abbey in that other village, and that other lord knows that and is using it against him to do this thing. Okay. But the whole point is, okay, we're that now we got a couple more things, and it's easier for us to generate some details, harder for the party to kind of make progress, probably. Especially in situations like this where people aren't going to want to give you all the information. Oh yeah, sure. Let me tell you the whole story. No, they're not going to do that. So there's going to be a lot of, and I just think I've often found it useful, successful to start to just tell the party, well, like, hey, these people don't trust you, right? So they walk up to this, they try to walk up to that farmer's house, and I'm like, okay, well, you guys, I said, I might say something like, okay, you walk up and like, yeah, she closed the door. And you can see she's got a look of fear and maybe mixed with a little bit of anger, slams the door, and maybe the player's looking like, what? And you're like, well, and I might say, hey, look, listen, she doesn't know you guys. You guys are dressed for battle, essentially, and they don't trust you. But you can see it in their eyes. They do not trust you, right? And you look. You look aggressive. You look like maybe the local lord sent you to do some kind of test on them. Like, you look aggressive. They don't know you. They don't trust you. So if you're serious about this, you're going to figure out that issue. I might also talk about that maybe there's some soldiers, guards, the Shire Reeve, whomever might be side-eyeing you, coming up there and talking like, oh yeah, and also you could tell other people are looking at you, and you get the feeling that your movements here and who you're interacting with is being watched, right? You're being watched. So what do you do? And the funny thing is, the upshot could be that you end up in a situation where what ends up being the kind of adventure for the party has nothing to do with this original incident. The party ends up making an enemy of this local lord because they start nosing around in the business and they don't check in with them, and they don't kind of make any overtures as to why, or blah, 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 right? There's a world in which you end up in all these kind of in hot water with all these different things happening, and the original event fades into the background. It just ends up becoming this inciting incident of all this other stuff that happens. Or it could be that another world, they try to go in the proper channels. They try to get an audience with the local lord. They promise that, listen, this doesn't sound right. Something's going on. We believe you that your life's in danger, and we want to help you figure it out. But there's no way that just some farmer managed this. And you kill him, you're killing the one link you have to some kind of conspiracy. So let us step in and do that. It's a totally other valid approach. And if they can make that work, now you've got this adventure, and now you can start thinking about, okay, well, I need to roll some more dice. I need to figure out what's going on, kind of thing, and staying ahead. But you don't have to do that stuff until the party acts on it. So we go back to this beginning part. We go, okay, they went down this plot, and yeah, they're going down that plot line, right? So the feast comes and goes, right? So there was a feast on the village. It comes and goes. Maybe some intrigues happen there. Maybe nothing happened there. Maybe it was just a feast celebrating whatever. We don't know. It doesn't matter. It happened. We could put it on some kind of clock. It's going to happen in 2 days. It happens. We can decide if there's something nefarious. Or if not, it could have just been a fun time. It could have just been a way for the party to get to know some of these people. It could have been, the feast could have been a situation in which it's a way for the party to potentially get some benefactors, get in front of people if they can get invited, right? The puzzle, if you will, of the feast might simply have been, can they figure out a way to attend so that they can hobnob and make connections, which I think is perfectly valid. It could be a really fun little mini adventure. And who knows, maybe intrigues happen there where you can decide. But they didn't do it. They went for the execution. So, hey, the feast comes and goes, and we can roll dice later to see if anything came out of it or if it was just a feast. And then the omen, we could put that in the back burner. We could think about what the omen does. We could think about if the omen relates. Maybe the omen relates to this execution plot as things develop. We can use oracles. We can figure that out. We can do it, but we don't need to build out a whole plot line, a whole front or anything over that because they didn't mess with it. And we could maybe just put, I like to think of the timelines as being like a week or a season, something like that. So either it's a short range one, which is like a week, which is like the feast, short range thing, right? It's a week long. At the end of the week, it's going to resolve. And other things might be a season long, which might be the omen. The omen, whatever's going to happen is going to be a season. Or maybe if you want to have like a week, a season, or a year. So maybe we could make a little table. When does it end? And when does it happen? And then do that. So that's kind of the idea behind it. But it's much easier to kind of riff on it and talk about it than it is to kind of write it down. But I think combination of these tables, and get at least something to get to the kind of high level stuff. Maybe I'll have some table of like, here's a whole bunch of nouns and here's a whole bunch of relationships. Like it's an NPC it's an NPC you don't know. I don't know, something like that. And then I think maybe I'll try to have some questions like that Quibon, like who benefits? Okay, this thing's happening, right? An execution for treason. Who benefits from the executioner? Who might have benefited from the treason if it really did happen? Right. Think about each step. Okay. The treason. Who would have benefited from the treason? Who benefits from the execution? And that then opens up. You can either roll more dice. Oh, who benefits from the execution? Oops. I rolled a 3. It's some kind of creature. Okay. Well, a creature for me is either an animal, a magic animal, or an awakened animal. A magic animal would be like a unicorn type thing. An awakened animal is like an animal. It's kind of usually like a Princess Mononoke was sort of my influence there. Those animals that can speak, they're like the big boar god and the thing like that, right? So that would be that. So it'd be interesting to think of if it's who benefits from the execution. It would be just a regular animal. Maybe it doesn't make sense. I roll again. Maybe it's something interesting. Oh yeah, the vultures. The vultures benefit. Does that mean something? I don't know. But maybe that ends up playing into another omen. Maybe the omen was about vultures having a feast, and so this comes full circle. But you just get all these threads coming out, and you just try to link the threads kind of as you need to, and just keep linking them together. At some point, you'll have to, obviously, there'll be things you want to prep more. I don't know that I could run a whole game like this. I bet you I could of a fashion. I probably would play loosey-goosey with locations like dungeons. I probably, or I'd have to run the dice and logos and get dungeons and, dungeons and dungeon stocking and things like that if I was going to run them in that kind of way. But I feel like you could have a lot of games where you're not really running in a lot of dungeons. You're really running more. You're in a ruined abbey, and there's certain things there, and maybe there are a couple of rooms, but you can just play a little loosey-goosey. But I think you get pretty far until you get to something like, okay, and then if they're going to be a location, well, yeah, I mean, prep is a thing. I'm not pitching this as the game where you don't prep, but just prepping. I think trying to keep with. I think my overall goals is often to prep the stuff you're going to use and don't prep the stuff you don't think you're going to use. Right, as much as you can, as much as you want to. Sometimes it's fun to world build, and so you want to do that. But other times, you want to kind of be targeted with what you're doing. So we just have limits on our time. And I just thought of this as a way to kind of kill two birds with one stone and then just hook into these. So not only is it just events that you go, oh, okay, that's happening, but it's like, no, these are events that we can be a part of and that the game is kind of expecting us to make ourselves a part of. We don't have to. There's enough things going on where we can choose, but that's kind of the deal. Brian says, if a party asked a townsfolk who benefits from this execution and they said the vultures, that would be a pretty badass line. Well, that probably is something that, and that's the thing, to the point, if they ask that, that's what they would get, because the villagers don't know. I mean, that's the thing, you can't, and this is part of how you as the GM need to it's not a bad kind of gating. It's the right kind of gating. A villager does not know who benefits behind the crime. Nobody knows, but maybe the criminals and some other people who are really into it. So if they go and ask villagers, like, hey, who benefits from this execution? They don't know, and they wouldn't tell you if they did know. If they were part of some peasant, because this was a peasant uprising happening, they're not going to tell you. So, they would give you some flippant answer like the vultures, the worms, whatever. I mean, this is where the party's going to have to think about, how do we get this information? And that's kind of that. And it's the adventure, right? It's the adventure trying to suss out these puzzles to get puzzling out the situation to get to where you get to. So the puzzle here is, oh, okay, we got to the town. We're interested. We think it's wrong. Maybe we think it's not right. Whatever it is, something's missing. And we've decided we want to investigate it. Okay, boom. Now we got to figure out these things. And that's the figuring out part. And those kind of situations is oftentimes the stuff that doesn't have a lot of things written about it anyway. I mean, in an adventure, you might get like, so-and-so knows this. So-and-so, the mayor knows that the butcher is in love with the innkeeper. The innkeeper knows that the mayor has a secret, dungeon under their house. The butcher knows that, right? You might get some of those things, but really how you get from kind of what they know to being given to the party is kind of left up to sort of role play anyway. So just role play it out. But they got to figure it out, and that becomes the puzzle. Do we sneak it in? Because here's your options, right? Okay, option one: we go question the farmer's wife and figure out who he knows and friends, other farmers, kind of canvas. You could do that, but you might only have a day. Depending on what the timeline for this is, maybe you have a day, maybe you have a week. Okay, you don't have a lot of time, so that's a long time. But you could try to do that, and maybe you get lucky. You could try to go to the local lord, like I mentioned, and try to get their permission and maybe get some insight there and buy some time. Maybe if you do that, you'll get access to be able to talk to the prisoner, this poor peasant, Sam, who's about to get gacked by the state. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have to we're going to sneak into the castle, get to the dungeon so we can try to get Sam out or at least figure out what's going on. Is there some kind of spell or ritual you can do to try to shed some light on it? Can you call in a favor from somebody? There's all these options, but that's the adventure. That's them figuring out, like, what are we going to do and trying to make it happen, which I think is kind of it's what we're all trying to do here, right? It's have fun trying to figure out these situations. But the thing is, as a GM, I didn't have to do a whole lot of prep for that. I mean, I did it right here. I didn't have this stuff pre-written. We rolled this thing up as we're going. And if I was playing a game, if I was running a game with you, I'd be saying the same stuff that I've been saying on the stream. Like, yeah, you go to the town and they're not sure. His name was Sam. He's kind of an angry dude, but he was pretty prudent. Maybe they would tell you that much if you kind of asked around. But again, I would say, like, yeah, people are watching you. People don't really trust you. All that stuff's going on. Yeah, we know we did something, right? And they're making a big show because this usually doesn't happen. We haven't had a hanging in these parts, and it feels like a generation. So we're not sure what's going on. And then, okay, the classic phrase, what do you do? And then the party decides, and then you just keep rolling along. And maybe you need to pull up a map of a castle if they end up wanting to sneak into a castle, or just roll with that. Or if they're going to go some other ways, you just roll with that. And you just keep using whatever resources you have as you go along. But, maybe they deal with that and it works out. Maybe it doesn't. But then we can roll. The next session comes along and we roll and we get, what did I get? I got, what is this? 35. So then maybe I roll, and now there's a holy rite that's being taken. And where is this holy rite being done? 3 and 5, 2 hexes to the southwest. And I look and say, oh yeah, this is this holy order down here is so we say, oh, there's a holy rite, yeah, and maybe because it makes sense. They don't know what it is, but they've heard about it. Okay, it's maybe the peasant Sam is involved with a holy order who is performing a rite to protest the execution. So now this becomes part of the story, right? Or I determine it's something else. In this case, as I'm looking at it right now, in the moment, I'm just rolling this up now, and I go, oh yeah, I think that's kind of cool. And if I hadn't had ideas like, well, maybe the peasant is part of some kind of treason, maybe this holy order, they're doing this thing, but there's also stuff on the down low, and it's that down low part that's leading right. Oh, that maybe there's someone we need to talk about. Maybe there's something going on. Okay, so you got that angle. I got a lot to work on with this, but I'm pretty happy with at least this kind of table. Though I don't have weather stuff on there. I wonder if I should have some weather, or if I should have weather separately. Maybe weather. I don't know if weather is so much a rumor or something else, something that happens. I'm not sure. I might have weather as like a separate thing. Like it's sometimes fun to also play around with the kind of literary weather. Something bad's happening. It's raining, right? So on the morning of the execution, it's like a stormy day because it's kind of raining, and maybe it's showing some kind of divine displeasure at the act. Or if it was a beautiful sunny day where it's happening, they're showing that some kind of favor, like, yes, this is what's supposed to be happening, or somewhere in between. I can have some fun. So I might want to keep them separate, but I'm going to keep kind of, I'm not doing this booklet is not meant to be the book of tables kind of thing, but it is appropriate in some things. And this is kind of how I'm imagining at least one way of creating stuff to do in the game. And as I'm gearing up finally to start doing some solo play, you're going to see me using these and kind of developing other oracles and things to kind of facilitate this style of play, at least until you get to some point where it's like, oh, I need a dungeon now, or oh, I need something else now. Brian says, sneak into the castle to try to talk this guy, and surprise, the moonlight comes in and reveals he's a werewolf. Yeah, that could totally be a thing. We could totally roll, especially if I'd rolled and they were like a monster, a Yonderkin, like that would totally be a thing that they could be. Right. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure where werewolves lie on here. But yes, totally could be a thing. So lots and lots of options. And that's kind of the idea, is like just to keep rolling. That was one of the things I think, and I still need to read some more back into it. But when I played that session of, what was it? That kind of solo, we played a co-op, but it's also so Ironsworn. I felt like one of the things in the Ironsworn loop was it continually kind of creating complications, and that these complications have an effect of creating more adventure material. So you're continually adding stuff onto it. So if however often you want to run these things, I would probably say weekly. Every week you're rolling. Maybe you start off with, you've got 3 or 4 of them that are there, right? You're just kind of setting the table, so to speak. And then every week, or maybe as you resolve one, you're rolling another one. They just constantly give you this, and then they can keep kind of feeding into each other. And then I think the next part would be, for me, is like, okay, well, are there ways you can look at how complications arise from things, can then have the questions about. I think one of the things that Ironsworn is, what prompts you a lot with questions like, how does this, oh, you failed here, but this other thing opened up. So how do how does this work? And maybe some ways to kind of monkey around with that. I will actually add these 2 tables if I can find space for them here or on the following page. And probably I'll also put in, I think, a timeline, like how long does this last? And I think I'll probably have something like a day, a week, a season, a year, some combination like that. You have some idea, at least as a referee, how quickly things are moving. And then maybe you can even have like, what is the impact? Is it local? Is it regional? Is it global? Like this omen, is something that's just this little area? Or is it this region, or something like, oh my gosh, it's the Great Conjunction, and it's going to change the universe. Thanks a bunch for hanging out. Enjoy the rest of your day, night, or whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.